Without further delay, I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Ron Kundis, Developer Evangelist for the Microsoft Corporation. Ron, you now have the floor.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast. This is actually part 11 in our series on Visual Basic, where we're talking everything from soup to nuts to kind of get you started on Visual Basic and introduce you to some of the concepts of the core language features. So today's topic is delegates and events. So we're going to be taking a look at the event model for Microsoft Visual Basic, which is very similar to the event models in other managed languages in the .NET framework. So we're going to discuss an overview of events and delegates, and we'll take a look at some examples of these. And then we'll also show you how you can consume and raise events in your applications as well. So the first thing we're going to talk about is events and delegates. So once again, we follow just a simple publish-subscribe model where we publish an event that basically just notifies the application of certain conditions, and then within our application, we simply subscribe to these events to be notified when these conditions have been met. And so Visual Basic simply publishes these events to these subscribers via delegates. So let's go ahead and take a look at just a very simple example of how Windows Forms events work. So I'm going to switch over to a code sharing demonstration at this time. Now my resolution is 1024 by 768. If your resolution is that or higher, you can press F5 on your keyboard to view this demonstration in full screen mode. So what I've got here is I've just got a simple little form that I've added a few controls to, some button controls to. And in this first example, we're just simply going to take a look at how we handle a simple event by subscribing to that event via an event handler. So if we actually drag and drop this button over to this form and then double click this button, it will actually stub out the event handler for us. Now the way that it does this is we simply it creates a button click event handler. Here are the event arguments, so the sender of this event, as well as any arguments for related to this event that was raised. And then here's the key clause here that denotes that we are handling the click event of the button that we have defined. And so it actually stubs this out for us automatically if we just drag and drop a button over to it and then double click on that button. It's also important to note that if I wanted to handle a different event of instead of the click event, I can simply come over here back to my designer, highlight, go ahead and select the control itself. And then in the Properties window in the lower right-hand pane of the Integrated Development Environment, I can switch to Events instead of just the Properties of the control itself. And so for instance, if I wanted to handle a different event, maybe I wanted to handle a maybe I wanted to handle, the mouse click event, for instance, on this control. I can simply double-click in this Properties window, and here you can see it would actually stub out the mouse click event handler for this. And once again, you notice that it accomplishes this by adding the handles clause at the end of this event handler definition. And so basically, this is simply telling the compiler that this event handler handles this specific event for this control. So as you can see, I can actually subscribe to notifications of different events for controls that I define very easily within the IDE itself. And so if we just look at the code right here, I'm simply just going to display a message that shows that I handled the button click event for this control. And as you can see, if I just go ahead and run this application, I'm going to step into it. And here you see that as I click this event, it actually goes into the event handler that I defined for a click event on this button control, and so therefore I can perform the logic necessary as a result of this button being clicked on my form. So as you can see, the IDE actually handles a lot of this for us in Visual Basic. It makes it very easy to subscribe to an event via an event handler, and it actually the IDE does most of the work for us by simply adding in the handles clause for this function definition that we've defined to handle this event being raised within my application. And so as one would expect, as a result of clicking on the button, then it performs the logic that I added into that event handler. So it's a very straightforward model in order to handle events within my application. So that's a very simplistic example of how Windows Forms events are handled within our applications. Now, another useful tool for us as well is what's known as a delegate. Now, this is simply a reference to a method. So it's similar to the Visual C++ function pointer. And it's important to point out here that delegates are type safe and secure. And so the way that we define a delegate is utilizing the delegate statement. Here you can see the definition of the delegate statement in Visual Basic. Now what a delegate allows us to do is a delegate allows us to perform a function call as a result of something occurring within our application. So once again, we're going to switch over to a code sharing demonstration to show you this in action. So what I've got here is I've simply defined a delegate. It does not have a return value, so I've defined it as sub. And I've just defined it, I've given it a name, a very simple delegate. And then in order to utilize this delegate, then I'm going to declare an instance of this delegate as, here's the new statement to create a new instance of this very simple delegate, which is defined in the previous delegate statement. And then I'm also passing in the address of the method that I want to invoke when this simple delegate is instantiated. And so therefore, this allows me to pass in the address of a method pointer as a result of instantiating this delegate. Now, it's important to point out here as well that I could actually add multiple handlers to this delegate so that I could call multiple methods as a result of instantiating this delegate. So if we actually just step into this code, and that's actually for the next demonstration of custom events for that form load event. So we'll just kind of step through that real quick. And then as a result of clicking this button, here you can see that I've actually handled the button click event for this second button here. And once again, it accomplishes this by utilizing the handle statement in Visual Basic and handling the specific event that I'm watching for, that I want to be notified of. And then once I do that, then I'm going to declare and instantiate this delegate. And then I'm actually going to execute the constructor here. And then as a result, what it's going to do is, as I execute this delegate, it's actually just a method pointer to a different method within my application. And so therefore, as one would expect, since I passed in the address of this other method pointer here, then it's just going to step right into that code. And here you can see that as a result, I am simply going to display a message as part of the user interface. Now, another thing that we're talking about, since we're talking about custom events and so forth as well today, is that it's very easy to define your own event and then raise that event within your application and then define an event handler for this custom event that we've defined. So the code that we utilize to actually add a custom event to our application here is, first we need to define the event itself. So I'm going to define a public event and I'm going to define it as time expired. And as you can see, this event is actually going to accept a parameter as well. And so I also need to define an event handler for this event. In other words, code that needs to execute when this event has been raised within the application. So here I've defined another method to handle this event when it's raised within the application. And so this is just one of the examples off Msdn that I added in here to make it easy to follow. And so I've just defined the name as handle time expired event. And then, as you can see, here's that parameter that I defined for my custom event within my application. And then, once again, I'm simply going to, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to display a message that shows that we did, in fact, catch this custom event. And then, of course, I'll just display whatever status message is passed into this event when it was raised. And then, as you can see here, I also need to set up an event handler. In other words, what I need to do is I need to define this that when this event is raised, this time expired event is raised, I need to define a method that will handle this. So this is an alternate method of using the handles clause, and it's actually much more flexible because I can add in multiple handlers for when this event is raised within my application. And so once I've defined this event handler, here you can see I just used the add handler statement within Visual Basic, and I define the event. The first parameter is the event, the name of the event that I'm adding this handler for. This is the time expired event that I defined in my previous code. And then, as you can see, I also need to pass in the address of the event handler. Now, it's important to note. Notice as I hover over this second parameter here, the add handler statement takes an event as the first parameter, and as you can see, it actually takes a delegate as the second parameter. So Visual Basic actually hides some of the details of creating delegates for us. As you can see, what actually happens here when I specify address of and then a method name handle time expired, then what it's actually doing behind the scenes is it's actually creating a delegate for us, and then it's invoking that delegate, specifying the handle time expired method as the method to invoke when that delegate is invoked. So as you can see, as part of Visual Basic, it'll actually hide some of these details for us. Now, syntactically, it's the same as declaring a delegate and then defining that delegate as the handle time expired event method. So actually utilizing this add handler statement makes it very easy within Visual Basic. So instead of having about 3 lines of code here in order to create the delegate itself and then specify the method to invoke as part of the delegate, I can simply use this add handler statement within Visual Basic to have the compiler do this for me. And so really and truly, this is a delegate behind the scenes here that it's utilizing to be notified of when this event occurs. And then within my application, to raise this event and cause this event to fire, and then as a result cause this event to notify any handlers that are associated with this event, I use the raise event statement in Visual Basic. And so here you can see I'm simply utilizing the raise event to raise my the event that I've defined, time expired, and then of course I'll pass in a message which is a parameter for this event. And so here I'm just passing in a simple little string to denote that a new status has occurred as part of this event. And so if I actually step into this, you can see that first of all the form1 load handler fires, which in turn will call up the setup event handler method. And as you can see, it then invokes the add handler statement to add the handle time expired, add a delegate that points to that handle time expired event, and add that as the handler for this event when it is fired. In other words, I am subscribing to notifications via this delegate for this time expired event. And so if I just go ahead and step through this code, you can see that it properly sets up the event handler. And then if I click this button, you can see that it steps into my button 1 click event handler. Once again, it does that via the handle statement. And then if I step through it, you can see that I'm going to raise this event now. So I'm going to go ahead and raise it. And as you can see that as a result of raising this event, it was notified via this via the delegate to invoke this subroutine that I've defined, handle time expired, via my event handler. And so as a result, it steps into this code, and then it updates the user interface with a new message. So let's looks like I've got a couple questions in the queue. Let's go ahead and end the code sharing demonstration for a second and check on some of the questions that are in the queue here. So here's a great question from Ed. So still don't understand why to use delegates. Well, actually, delegates allow us to specify functions that will run as a result of an event being fired. In other words, we use a delegate to specify a function that should be executed as a result of an event being fired. So not only do we define the event, but then we define which handler should execute once that event is fired. Now, it's also important to note here as well that via the use of delegates, we can actually utilize the ability to invoke multiple functions as well. So whereas I simply added a single handler for that event, I could actually add multiple handlers to that event, and I can change these at runtime as well. Another reason, here's a good reason, here's a good business case scenario of a good time to utilize delegates to invoke functionality that we can't do otherwise. So imagine, if you will, that you've got the main interface of your application and you want to invoke a long-running procedure. So common practice with invoking a long-running procedure would be to offer a status bar or a progress bar to denote exactly how long the process is going to take to the user. Well, what we can do is we can actually define the use of a delegate to asynchronously update that progress bar on a different thread without adversely affecting the performance of the main thread of the user interface in invoking that long-running procedure. So that's one use of why you would want to use a delegate, for instance. And then here's another question that we have in the queue as well. Getting the source code for this. Yeah. Typically, I post the source code on my blog. Now, I have been having some access issues with my blog. I thought I would get it resolved last week, but I haven't quite gotten that resolved yet. I'm hoping that by the end of the day, I will be able to have my account reset so I can post up there. So I apologize for the delay, but I'm going to try to post all the source code for this out to my blog as soon as I get that access issue updated. And then, so let's see. That looks like I addressed most of the questions in the queue for now. If you do have a question, go ahead and submit it in the question manager, and we'll get to it in just a moment. So let's go ahead and talk about these events. So this is a message sent from the business logic, and only code that specifically listens to an event will receive notification. So in my previous example where I actually added a handler to that event, Basically what I'm specifying is that, hey, I want to be notified when this event is fired so that I can perform some logic as a result of this event occurring within my application. So some great examples of this in just very simple event handling is that button click event that we wanted to be notified of. So utilizing that handles clause within Visual Basic.net, I specified that when that event fired, in other words, when a button is clicked, it actually fires a click event for the button, and then by specifying that handles clause, I define that, hey, I want to be notified when this event is fired because I want to perform some logic as a result of this event firing. And so here is an example of declaring an event through the use of a delegate. And as you can see, we can also define our own custom events within our applications. We can declare our own event class as well. And so declaring an event class just requires these steps. Go ahead and create the class that's derived from system.event.args, and then declare a delegate that it will be invoked with, and then define a public event member that defines the event itself, and then provide a protected method that actually raises the event. This is what these are the steps to follow to actually create a custom event class within our application. So once again, let's just go ahead and let's switch back over to our code sharing demonstration, and let's review exactly what we did to raise this custom event. Here I've just defined the event within my application, and then I defined a subroutine that will be executed when my application has been notified of the event, and then I use the add handler statement to subscribe to notifications for this event firing. And then basically what that tells the compiler at runtime is that, hey, when this time expired event fires, I want to be notified of that, and I want to execute this subroutine as a result of that event firing. And so as a result, my handle time expired event handler will fire, and then I can perform whatever logic I would like to as part of this event being raised within the application. So that's an example of defining a custom event within my application, and then defining a handler that subscribes to notifications of when this event is fired. So hopefully that clears that up just a little bit. Let's go back to the questions in the queue. And then can you add the handles clause to more than one subroutine for the same event? Actually, I know that you can have an event handler with multiple handles clause that it subscribes to notifications of multiple events. You would actually have to use the add handler statement to actually add more than one subroutine for the same event. So that add handler statement that I specified, I could specify multiple add handler statements to fire multiple subroutines for the same event by simply adding additional handlers to that event notification. So that would be easily accomplished by just adding an additional add handler statement within my application there. And then, do delegates automatically run on a new thread, or do you have to specify this with some syntax? Actually, you can have delegates run on a new thread, but you do have to specify for it to actually run on a new thread, and that would allow you to actually execute some statements asynchronously on a different thread through the use of delegates. And then another question, how can we call a function returns a value with the help of delegates? Let's see. Well, let me go back to my example here, and I thought I had an example of that, but let me just make a note to look for an example of that real quick. So I'll tell you what. Let me get an example of that ramen, and I'll look for that real quickly while we go to the summary of this presentation, and I'll see if I can find an example that I can point you to of specifically doing that. So we introduced the Visual Basic Event Model. We took a look at how you can define events and delegates within your application, and then we demonstrated how you can add a custom event to your application, and then how you would raise that event as well as consuming that event via the use of a handler as well. So I also wanted to point out that next week we're going to be taking a look at inheritance and polymorphism in Visual Basic. So I hope you'll join us for the next session in this series. And I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah. While I'm going to look for a couple of examples and then handle some of these questions in the queue. I'm going to stick around to the top of the hour handling questions. So if you've got a question for me, go ahead and submit it now, and we'll cover that right after the wrap-up.
All right. Thanks so much, Ron. I'd like to take a quick minute, as Ron mentioned, to share some additional resources for the Microsoft Office Live meeting. We'll begin our final question-answer session in just a minute. So if you have any last-minute questions, just go ahead and type those in the question answers pane and just click Ask. And to view a replay of today's live event or to register for upcoming webcasts, go to Microsoft.com/webcast. And now would be a great time to go ahead and print a copy of today's PowerPoint by just simply going to File and Print to PDF. And we will be providing a survey for today's event in just a minute. Please take a few moments to complete the survey. The feedback and comments that you provide allow us to create better webcasts for you. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. And by attending this live webcast and submitting the survey, you'll be registered to win a Zune digital media player as shown on the screen now. And let me go ahead and get that survey up there for you. And as you are filling out the survey, you can also go ahead and type in any last-minute questions for Ron's answer. So just follow the links provided in your interface and take a few moments to complete today's webcast evaluation. Your comments are very valuable and greatly appreciated. So now, Ron, back over to you for the last couple of minutes to go ahead and answer any questions.
Yeah, I've answered a couple one-on-one. I'm actually looking for a couple of examples to be able to point you to as well for further using delegates. And give me just a second. I'm actually I'll post this answer to everyone to provide the link to further examples for delegates in Visual Basic. So give me just 1 second here. I'll look for that topic pointer. And I'm going to go ahead and post this link to everyone. So this is a great link to get started on. Let's see while I post that. All right. Let's see. And I also got a question that's a great question too. I'm going to point you to an example of this as well, which is how do we use delegates for callbacks? And there's actually a great example of this on Msdn in the Visual Basic Programming Guide. So I'll point you to that, and if you don't mind, I'll post that to everyone as well. So while I do just a little bit of research to check out these these examples, I'll turn it back over to Tracy. Or Sarah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We do so many of these, don't we? Let's see. Here we go. Here's one example. All right, it looks like there's just a couple other questions in the queue, and I'll handle these on a one-on-one basis to explain it a little further.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and close?
Yeah, I will stick around to the top of the hour though, and I'll stick around to the top of the hour, answering up some of these questions too.
All right, it sounds like we're going to end a little bit early. I'd like to extend a special thank you again to Ron, and thank you for everyone for attending. As Ron mentioned, he will be sticking around, so if you have any questions, just go ahead and feel free to stay logged on and ask him those questions. And that concludes today's webcast. You may now disconnect from the audio portion of this conference.